Bernard Hinault reading about cover boy Bernard Hinault in L'Équipe, France's #1 sports magazine. And he's had occasion to do that a lot in his long career riding a bicycle. Now, after Friday's first day of racing, Hinault wears the yellow leader's jersey. Just 21 seconds behind Hinault is his teammate, American Greg LeMond, making some last-minute preparations. It's time for the second day of racing and the longest single-day race of this year's Tour de France. 179 riders begin the 160-mile trek, mostly through the intimate back roads of Brittany. It's really a race through Bernard Hinault's backyard. The Tour de France, an event, the scope of which can only be realized after a look at the arena. France. This year's tour makes its start just outside Vannes, 18 miles from the opens. Will take the riders 2,567 miles, 23 days.
But not everybody enjoys the Tour de France, and Denis Roux, he stops here with a back wheel flat. He knows now the day ahead is a hard one, because the pack wait for no one, and the record field of 180 riders cram the French roads, and the man in yellow has to take a little trip up and down the bunch to see exactly where the favourites are. Tour de France is a matter of team tactics. The big teams take on each other, and Bernard Hinault's La Vie Claire team include this year Greg LeMond. And LeMond, taking a drink now, knows the racing this day is still ahead. On his back, a musette carrying sandwiches for the trip. And the team to beat is at the front of the race. Phil Anderson of the Panasonic Rally team rides close to his teammate Eric van der Aarden in the green points jersey. If the Panasonic tactics work out, then they could have their man in yellow tonight. At the back of the race, Bernard Hinault drops back to his manager for some advice how to handle the tactics of the Panasonic Rally. He's very concerned by the fact they're all at the front, setting the pace so high it's hard to follow. Greg LeMond tries to interrupt, break up the rhythm, and try and bring his team back in the race. And Steve Bauer is proving to be a valuable new teammate to LeMond, because he's bringing back his man Bernard Hinault now, back up to the Panasonic team, to prove that this is all a race of tactics today. Anderson, unperturbed, works well at the front with the Panasonic riders, knowing that they can get their man Eric van der Aarden to the finish. He's a great sprinter. The victory could be his. No effort is spared by the rally riders, and at the finish, it's all for everybody as Rudy Matisse surprises to take first place. But watch the man in second, because he's the green jersey of van der Aarden, and second is good enough to make that jersey yellow.
And that's the important thing in this most prestigious bike race. It's all based on time. After 2 days, Eric van der Aarden has the best overall elapsed time. Earlier today, this 30th of June, it was the race from Lorient, France to Vitré. And the story was most everyone trying to get away, because entering the race, Belgium's Eric van der Aarden here had a 32-second lead over the rest of the pack. Greg LeMond working to engineer a breakaway using his teammates as a windbreak. But no escape for LeMond, the American. And Irishman Sean Kelly, too, the Tour's best sprinter, wearing a red jersey to show so. For everyone today, including four-time winner Bernard Hinault, it was nothing but frustration, because all the breakaways ended up being absorbed by the pack. And everyone finished en masse, which means that even though Rudy Matisse would cross the finish line first, the Belgian Eric van der Aarden was close enough to the rest of the pack to retain his yellow leader's jersey. So after 3 days of racing of 23, a look now at the standings as we watch van der Aarden on the winner's stand. Greg LeMond still in the thick of it. For Eric Heiden and Phil Leggett, I'm John Tesh saying so long for now from France.
All right, John, thank you.
Together, they form a caravan of blazing colors, joined by one common bond: high-speed madness on a bicycle. But the will to win can only be found alone and from deep inside. Time is all that matters here. The man who can stay ahead of the rest rides with the yellow jersey, which, as his golden fleece, only teases those who attempt to snatch it off his back. The mad hunt for the yellow jersey builds a junkyard filled with broken bikes and shattered dreams. This is the Tour de France. For the men who race it and the millions who watch it, it's the most magnificent sporting event in the world. beautifully tranquil is the French countryside that invites it, and how perfectly devilish is the course that serves up the most grueling bicycle race in the world. Hello everyone, I'm John Tesh, and welcome to our second week of coverage of the Tour de France bicycle race. You know, the Tour has been described many ways, but most of all, it's a celebration by the millions of these people out here who seem to come from nowhere each year to line the streets of France to cheer their heroes of bicycle racing. Each day, it's a different race. One day, it might be a time trial, which is a race against the watch, or an all-out sprint, or a hill climb up the side of an Alp. 2,567 long miles over 23 days. And as you may already know, the winner of this whole thing is the man who completes the entire course in the fastest overall elapsed time. Oddly enough, one of the men who's picked to win this year is American Greg LeMond. And for more on that, here's a veteran of 13 Tours de France, Phil Liggett.
Greg LeMond now knows he really can win this Tour de France, but he has two very strange problems. One, of course, his own teammate, Bernard Hinault, 4 times winner. The other is down-the-street neighbour, Phil Anderson. And like LeMond, Anderson has been forced to leave his native country to come into Europe and make his fortune. But you know, all three could be on the finished podium in Paris. It's a question of which order.
And the decision on who would wear yellow first was made on day 1, the prologue time trial in the heart of Brittany. In the start house, 27-year-old Australian Phil Anderson knew the prologue would serve notice to he and his rivals as to the strength of Phil Anderson in this year's Tour. The Belgians call the time trial the Race of Truth, and it's aptly named. This race was only 4 miles long, but Anderson and 24-year-old American Greg LeMond knew the wait in the start house was a countdown to the lonely and painful ride alone without the help of teammates. Teammate Frenchman Bernard Hinault with the concentration of a man who last year won this, the Tour's first race. Like LeMond, Hinault wore an aerodynamic helmet. His lightweight bike stripped down and fashioned with a solid rear wheel to knife through the wind and steal precious seconds from the unforgiving clock. For his effort, the Australian Anderson would finish the prologue 19 seconds behind the leader. Greg LeMond found himself tugged along by the screams of fans who cheered this hero from another country. But these fanatics of bike racing reserve their final outrageous pleas for victory for the cyclist they have named the Badger, Bernard Hinault. At the summit, and Greg LeMond's finish would leave him 21 seconds back in the overall lead. It was, of course, Bernard Hinault who established the best time in the Race of Truth, and his La Vie Claire team jersey was replaced by one of yellow to mark him as the Tour's overall leader. Gregory James LeMond, proud father and past world champion, now living and training in Belgium and conquering a sport certainly not yet this popular in America. Pick up any paper or magazine this time of year in Europe, and you'll see a lot of this son of a railway worker, 30-year-old Bernard Hinault, who specializes in whipping the best bike racers in the world and making a fortune doing it. Winning the 1,000-mile Tour of Switzerland 1 month ago is reason enough for Australian Phil Anderson to be smiling over his health food. Anderson also left his native land to train in Belgium and does so with his neighbor, Greg LeMond. In the Tour, the two ride on rival teams. Lots of smiles on the faces of this year's favorites, but the Tour has a way of changing things. The toll of 23 days at 100 miles a day. The crush of the international press just about the time you'd like to catch your breath. And a bout with fatigue that renders you helpless.
Pack. The leader at home in his own back garden of Brittany could not have made a better beginning. His own teammate, Greg LeMond, is only 21 seconds behind, and the young American makes a formidable ally for Hinault. But the Tour de France is all about team tactics, and the Panasonic team demonstrates early on that they intend to take the lead today after all. Phil Anderson, the Australian, is their leader, but today the man they call the Kangaroo is sharing his stardom with Belgian teammate Eric van der Aarden. Although he wears a special green jersey, he's still part of the boys in blue and white. And while Anderson concentrates on the pace and saves energy for the week ahead, the team joins forces to help van der Aarden, and it makes an awesome show of strength. Further back is Olympic silver medalist Steve Bauer in his first ever tour, and his first job to help his leader Bernard Hinault regain his place at the front of the pack. But for today at least, the Panasonic Express will not be stopped, and that means the Belgian Eric van der Aarden will wear yellow.
So Eric van der Aarden in yellow, signing autographs and enjoying the star status as the tour's leader. But wait a minute here. Van der Aarden, although he's a competent cyclist, is not expected to hold the lead. He's actually been hired on the Panasonic team to help the team's #1 rider to a victory. That man is Phil Anderson. And in a race where teamwork is very important, Anderson depends on his 9 other riders to help him win the Tour.
You deserve it.
Here's Eric Heiden with some more.
Thanks.
In the 23 days of the Tour de France, no one can win it alone. Each rider out here is on a team, and each team has its stars, which means that each team also has its slaves. These are the dispensable riders the French call domestiques. They're the water boys for the team leaders and will willingly sacrifice themselves so the stars can do it. Teo has resigned himself to be one of the Indians, and as such is one of the lowest paid members on the totem pole. He makes $25,000 a year as compared to someone like Phil Anderson, who can expect 5 times as much. Nevertheless, you have to be a great warrior to survive on one of the world's great cycling teams. On a hot and sunny day, one of the first jobs for a domestique is to go back to the team car for food and water for the stars. Carrying water bottles wherever possible, even down the backs of their jerseys, they know success is often measured by the amount they can deliver at one time.
When the star breaks down, life becomes kind of busy for the workers. Here, by working together, the servants pull Le Monde back to the safety of the pack, and without him using hardly any energy at all. Drafting behind another rider can save as much as 30% of effort, and that, measured over 3 weeks, can mean the difference between yellow and nothing. And while Le Monde chases back, Hinault has a strategy chat.
The Panasonic domestiques, who have controlled the race thus far, have run out of gas and now must work extra hard just to keep up with the rest of the pack.
Remember Kim Anderson, the water carrier? He now has a new role to play, and here he is leading a breakaway group. The stars, Bernard Hinault and Greg LeMond, are happy to have a team man out in front. Don't forget, domestiques can win too. So while the stars of the race keep an eye on one another, paced of course by a domestique, Anderson's breakaway will succeed. And because he has the best overall time of the group, Anderson the worker takes on yet another new role, that of carrying the burden of the yellow jersey. The stars themselves, with 2,000 miles to go, aren't quite ready yet to move in.
So wearing the yellow jersey makes Kim Anderson a marked man, with the rest of the stars conserving their energy. And now it's time for those stars and workers like Teo de Roy to get some rest.
So you're under a lot of stress every day. So when you are on the table having a massage, you're very satisfied.
So a day in the life of the domestique. And after one night's rest, this real-life soap opera will be back on the roads in the Tour de France. Of northern France. Not roads, really, but cobblestones joined together by dirt and weeds. Here in July, the people of France wait for what the cobbles will soon bring. They know their favorites. They know their names, their numbers, and their task ahead. The roads that once carried the armies of Napoleon now turn a bicycle race into a raging nightmare. on two wheels. Today, the Tour de France will pull its riders through l'Enfer du Nord, the hell of the North. Bernard Hinault, a man who once said he'd never race over cobblestones again in his life, had to change his mind for a chance to win his 5th Tour. Kim Anderson, the smiling domestique, is the Tour's overall leader. So day 6 of 23, and time for another 149 miles over the flat roads of the North and the patches of cobblestones. What about those cobbles?
Sometimes it could be where you win and lose a race. I mean, if you lose 4 or 5 minutes, which is easy on cobblestones, you can lose the Tour de France. You gotta be careful.
We are in Neuchâtel-en-Bray in the Normandy section of France, where the population of 6,000 would all appear to be cycling fans. And as they watch these men in their brightly colored jerseys roll out of town, you can bet they'll be dashing inside to watch live on French TV what happens when these cyclists reach those cobblestones.
Ahead, the sunshine and smooth roads disguise the face of the devil. Le Monde will find no protection behind the dark glasses, and Hinault, who hates the cobbles, can expect none behind his young teammate. In the hell of northern France, the cobbles defy team tactics, and every man will survive, or not, on his own initiative. The kangaroo, Phil Anderson, his domestique providing a windbreak, now fuels up for the journey. The Panasonic leader must prove himself and make the trip into hell personally. But there's always the spoilers, and 2 riders thought not to have a chance steal a 19 minutes lead, and new professional Teun van Vliet has visions of glory. So he sets a pace that Henri Manders is happy to follow. The pack proceeds with caution because, as most of them know, there's no good reason to rush into hell.
There's really no hurry. The cobblestones will wait. Van Vliet and Manders are the first to ride this roller coaster, comfortable only with their 19-minute time advantage. But these 2 up front only feed the hunger of the pack behind. Manders and Van Vliet still up front, behind them, the fury of the chasing pack. And suddenly, the beast is awakened in l'Enfer du Nord. With the insane race pace comes the inevitable, and even the roads between the patches of cobblestones are treacherous. How can you win a bike race that won't even let you finish? Strength and courage to get back on your bike and then try it all over again. The chasing group of cyclists who escaped the falls have, like locusts, begun to devour the leaves of Manders and Van Vliet. But for now, these 2 youngsters are trying to run away with the Tour de France. But will the best of the rest in the world let them get away with it? The gap begins to close. Do the men riding up front with such youthful abandon know their time in the lead is growing shorter? And look at Van Vliet. Is that the face of a man who thinks he can win? Of the two leaders who once held that 19-minute advantage is now becoming clear. The Panasonics, led by Domestique Théo-Deroy, pulls the pack along. Van Vliet is the first to be absorbed by the pack. But Manders still has something left and will go on to win the day's race. But because the Tour is based on overall elapsed time, Kim Anderson retains the yellow jersey as he brings himself and the pack to within 11 seconds of Manders. Anderson returns to his chores as Domestique, as Manders goes on to win his first race in the Tour de France. And so this day ends pretty much as it began, apart from a frightening trip through the hell of the North. So the standings in the Tour de France after 6 days of 23. All of the top riders still very close. As American Greg LeMond sees it, those standings are encouraging.
I think I have the potential to win this race this year or even next year, but I really feel great right now. I mean, I really feel good. And so we'll just have to wait and see who's the strongest.
Behind, a chance to snatch the yellow jersey. Bernard Hinault is not proficient in the time trial. He is its master. The statement was made bolder and more masterfully than anyone could have imagined. The Badger beat his nearest competitor in the time trial by more than 2 minutes. And when he stood on the podium in the yellow jersey, it was as the overall leader more than 2.5 minutes ahead of the man in second place. That man, Greg LeMond, a crushing blow for the American and the race only 9 days young of 23. 10, Bernard Hinault, a cyclist many thought was finished after his injury 2 years ago. Hinault captains the most powerful team in the Super Bowl of cycling. He hired this man, American Greg LeMond, away from a rival French team. Hinault has put together an offensive line of outcast and old veterans thought to be over the hill. You might say these are the old football Redskins. Quite simply, it's a team designed for either Greg LeMond or Bernard Hinault to win the Tour de France. Hinault has seen to it, too, that the depth of his team also includes young stars like Olympic silver medalist Steve Bauer. To look at this team in the Tour de France, which is certainly a dream team, you might think you were watching George Allen's Redskins. This is the dream team of cycling. First serious mountain race in the Tour de France. Is this the face of a man who's nervous? Anyway, it's not time to get too relaxed because this could well be a showdown in the Alps. Greg LeMond proves he may have a future as a professional bike racer. Phil Anderson checks out the lay of the land, which will be mostly uphill. And although he's way behind in the overall standings, the mountains are where Colombian Luis Herrera will begin to shine. Never before visited. The race begins in an unusual manner. It's a rolling start. It begins when the red flag goes down, and then it's a descent downhill to Lake Geneva in Switzerland. The speed demons begin to try out their skills very early. They may put their brakes on out of habit, but there's no stopping the tour at the Swiss border. And there are no passports checked. But it's time now to prepare for the climb straight at the side of the mountains. And for more on what it takes, we found one of the toughest mountains around for a demonstration by U.S. Pro Cycling champion Eric Heiden.
Before the bottom. Being in front of the pack means you don't have to contend with the slower climbers, so the best riders fight to be the first up the start of a climb. When you're caught in the pack, you're at the mercy of the leaders. And if you don't make your move early, it's not just the racers you have to contend with, but also the narrow roads clogged with enthusiastic fans.
Many of these bike racing fanatics camped out here late last night so they could secure a place to watch the Tour de France as it goes by. Thousands more before dawn today hiked up the side of this mountain so they'd have a place to watch it. The reason? Well, here on day 12, it's the race up to the ski station at Avoriaz. Who are the mountain climbers in the Tour de France bicycle race? Today we find out.
Every rider fears the mountains. He never knows until he gets there how well he will climb. The question too was, could Bernard Hinault control the race? And with the Colombian Luis Herrera, he gave his answer on the very first day in the Alps by going on the attack. Hinault, the proud Breton, out to prove a point and leave the rest adrift. Le Monde is taken by surprise and asks his La Vie Claire teammate, what's going on? But Hinault has his own ideas today and out to prove he can win in the mountains as well as in the time trial. So now, with Herrera, the brilliant climber for company, Hinault wants to show Le Monde and the rest he is still the #1. It was here last year where Hinault faltered and lost the Tour. Behind, Phil Anderson is anxious to chase, and Le Monde is asked to join him as he hits the front. But ahead, Herrera and Hinault build their lead, and at the top of the first climb, the tandem leads by 1 minute and 4 seconds. Now, for the first time in this Tour de France, the American Greg LeMond has to make the decision he knew one day would come, whether to stay behind and protect his friend and leader, or take up the challenge for the lead himself. But for Hinault, he's grown wings, and on the next climb, he is now an angel of the mountains. And the man who once lived in fear of the granite rocks now relishes the thought of conquering them. Even Luis Herrera, wearing the polka dot jersey as the Tour's leading climber and used to his homeland heights of 5,000 feet, is forced to follow. The Badger has his sights on the finish, and who can stop him now? Lower down the slopes, the youthful Greg LeMond can no longer wait. He's made his decision to attack. LeMond makes it clear too. He can win the Tour de France and refuses to concede victory to even Hinault. But towards the top of the second climb, the Frenchman continues to set a pace, kept cool by water. The Tour de France continues unabated, and the pair now lead by 2 minutes and 35 seconds. And between Hinault and LeMond, that means a mile, all uphill. The 4 times winner of the Tour de France is overheating, but haunted by the memories of last year when Laurent Fignon won, the champion of the time trial is now the champion of the mountains. Attracted as if by a strange magnetic power, LeMond chases his mentor up the mountain. The American, now clear of the field, is free to try and catch him. And by a strange coincidence, along for the ride is another Colombian hill climber. With all his legs working like pistons, Herrera hangs on grimly to Hinault, wondering what demon has possessed the man in yellow. On the steepest slopes of the race so far, Hinault has stunned his main rivals by attacking as even he has never done before. It's not so easy for LeMond, who normally specialises in the mountains. His face is twisted in pain. He's glad to limit his losses by following the wheel of the Colombian partner. There are 2 men in the race now, LeMond and Hinault. Hinault's climbing partner, Herrera, is too far behind in overall time to challenge for the yellow jersey. But LeMond can, and he recovers a minute on this final climb to Avoriaz. But over the finish line, Herrera has jumped out in front to win Colombia's first stage of the Tour. For Hinault, he's won his own victory by knocking out everyone on the day they thought they could take him. And at the end of a perfect day, day 12 shows Hinault extending his lead to 4 minutes over Greg LeMond.
Well, the tour's over for the others, yeah. Not over for me, not over for Bernard. I think it's over for the others. It's never over, though. I mean, we still get 2 more weeks and a lot more mountains to go. So things can change like that. You have a bad day and it's finished.
Day 13 and the madness of the Tour de France in the Alps. It's here where the crowds are the thickest and where the racing is most arduous. In one long day, these cyclists may climb 10,000 feet up and down into ski resorts. The climbing sucks the strength from the weak, and the effort builds a soaking sweat that will soon turn to ice on the descent. The fans all know this, and when the racers reach the Alps, they wait at the summit and hand the racers newspapers to protect them from the chill.
A rider can reach speeds of 60 miles an hour on hair-raising descents. This is not the time to relax. The daredevils can make up lost time on the climbers. Anticipation is the key to being a great descender. In a long race, people left behind miles ago may suddenly reappear when lunchtime arrives. The heat of the race is temporarily postponed as riders take a break to relax a bit. Arch rivals may come alongside each other and offer drink or just shoot the breeze in what is an unlikely social gathering. But it only lasts as long as your lunch bag is full. Then it's back to work.
But some days, like here on day 13, all this chasing up and down the Alps for Hinault, LeMond, and the rest would have little change on the standings. But the reminders of danger of alpine freefall are everywhere. Day 14. Time for the Badger to once again enjoy his specialty, the time trial. Greg LeMond gave everything he had. But the Badger, although he didn't win the trial, was able to put another 1 minute 23 seconds on LeMond, knocking him further back into second place after 14 days. LeMond 5:23 back and in trouble. In a news conference, Hinault says he will ride next year to help Greg win. He's virtually announced his own victory. Coming up, the crash. And out front, who else? Bernard Hinault. Speed was the key this day, and everyone out front was involved. It was a day for all of France to sit proudly as Hinault, their proud champion, appeared on his way to winning a record 5th Tour de France. Swinging west, day 17 took the riders from Autran to Saint-Étienne. Still 500 miles from Paris in the Champs-Élysées finish. It was a day American Greg LeMond was to attack and gain valuable seconds on teammate Hinault's lead. But Hinault, the maillot jaune, riding in the yellow jersey, still rode confidently and was stronger than ever, even though on his tail was Australian Phil Anderson. At the finish line, LeMond's group had already finished, and about a minute behind was Bernard Hinault in his group. And then, the impossible happened. Spectators waited to see who was involved in the crash. Was it Hinault? Was it the yellow jersey? Hinault had crashed head first. Because he crashed 1 kilometer before the finish line, he would be counted as an official finisher. But then again, Bernard Hinault doesn't care much about rules. It was the impossible effort. Hinault still chasing this dream of holding the yellow jersey and taking it on to Paris and winning his 5th Tour. At the finish line, an exhausted and beaten Bernard Hinault was led to an ambulance. He was treated for a broken nose and took 4 stitches in the side of his head. And still the questions, was Bernard Hinault all right? Day, as he met his son at the hotel, it was obvious that Hinault, at least on the surface, was as strong as ever. So Hinault had survived this awesome crash, but the memories still remain as the tour continues.
Je pense que
I still
ce
have
qu'il me
2
reste mes
arms
2
and
jambes
2
et 2 bras.
legs. It would be
encore
difficult for the rest
difficile.
of them. After 16 days, then, Le Mans only 3 minutes 32 seconds behind Hinault. Day 17 started on an uncertain note. Would Bernard Hinault still ride in the lead? Hinault was smiling, though, planning strategy with teammate Greg LeMond. Would the American now take over from Hinault and ride into the yellow jersey? Well, the answer would apparently not come on this day, as the team was busy gathering supplies to provide for Hinault. They controlled the race tightly, surrounding their yellow jersey all day long. Hinault's crash had left fewer scars than thought, and he continued ahead just as strongly as ever. Along with his boys, Hinault was still in the lead, setting the pace for all the riders behind. And so on day 17, the yellow jersey proved that even a spectacular crash could not come out of the lead. After 17 days of 23, Hinault with Le Mans 3 minutes 32 seconds behind. The race continues between the American and the Frenchman. For Phil Liggett and Eric Heiden, I'm John Tesh. Next week, we'll see you in Paris. The race in the world. Arriving here the champion is something Frenchman Bernard Hinault has done 4 times. The 30-year-old son of a railway worker entered this year's race confident with an ever-present smile, and early in the tour became accustomed to wearing yellow as the tour's overall leader. 24-year-old American Greg LeMond has come here for his second tour. These are the early pictures of the superstars who ride bicycles. In 3 weeks, the pictures have changed.
Do you want me to punch you in the face?
A wounded Bernard Hinault after a horrible crash. Le Mans' tears of anger. The constant overpowering attention for Hinault. The blinding exhaustion. It's a battle that has already left its marks. This is the story of a man full of fire and with the power in his mind and his legs to ignite the roads of France. The man the French call Le Blaireau, the Badger. The 30-year-old Breton who has yanked millions from their homes to build a gauntlet, a pathway to history for their national hero. 4 times the tour has fallen to Hinault. He rides this year to become only the 3rd man ever to win 5. From across the ocean has come the blonde-haired, blue-eyed American, Greg LeMond, who's moved his family to Europe so he can train with the very best. His raw talent and lust for competition have made him the best American in history. And now this penultimate pair rides together on the same team, the American and the Frenchman, looking to dominate the Tour de France on a team put together by Bernard Hinault. Hinault and his first lieutenant command a group of 10 riders strong, who always seem to be riding at the front. They're called La Viclaire and have rolled over their competition here in the Tour like a freight train balanced on 2 wheels. The La Viclaires lead a whirling swarm of the best of the rest in the world, all of whom cannot win, albeit not even finish this hellish adventure. Saturday, as the powerful quarterback of the La Viclaires, Bernard Hinault, rode comfortably toward the town of Saint-Étienne, displaying his yellow leader's jersey across the rolling countryside for all of France to see. American Greg LeMond, 5 minutes 23 seconds back in the standings, was in second place and making a bid to chip away some time. While Hinault was comfortable to stay in the chase group, his leader's jersey was safe from harm. LeMond's group finished about a minute and a half ahead.
Today is the most critical day for Bernard Hinault. Everyone wants to know how badly he's hurt, so he must protect his body and his teammates protect his lead. One teammate makes sure he has plenty of water and takes up the rear on bottle patrol. While in the front, the rest are building a force field to help repel any attacks on the yellow jersey. For Hinault, today is full of questions. How well will he be able to continue in what is still a grueling race ahead, and can he keep his lead? For any doubts that he may have, his teammates are there to relieve them, and until he recovers, they will happily carry the load.
So the La Viclaire freight train rolls along with hopes that they'll be able to climb into the Pyrenees with that golden fleece under lock and key. Upcoming, the Pyrenees Mountains and the ultimate test for Bernard Hinault.
And life at the back of the race is often as busy as at the front. And if there's sign of the body cracking up, then a freezing cold spray might help a bit. The bicycles too have a pretty rough time, so extra parts are added as this office rolls along. And if you don't agree with the results so far, then call in on the office manager and complain. You may get nowhere, but you've got the problem off your chest. Pascal Simon reports sick. No time off, but some help. Nice suntan, Lotto man. Pity it's not all over. Still, this'll help. A change of socks. Most do this before going to work. Sunflowers, well, they grow well round here. And now I know why. You've got to keep going, but no reason why you can't put your feet up. It's time for a snack.
Bon appetit.
These provide the challenge for those brave enough to climb into the clouds on bicycles. The Tour's leader, Bernard Hinault, the face of a man who's already survived one headfirst crash, and now the concentration of a champion who knows well the Pyrenees Mountains. At 3:38 behind Hinault is LeMond. Greg's mountain training has prepared him well for today's race. And on a rival team, 26-year-old Stephen Roche from Dublin, Ireland, whose climbing skills make him now the only threat to the La Viclaire machine. Who are the climbers and who are the pretenders? The topography here will give everyone the answer. With 634 miles to go before they reach Paris, 29 cyclists have already decided they've had enough. This race begins in one of France's largest cities, Toulouse. 131 miles, and it's considered the single most difficult mountain race in the Tour de France. The most telling climb comes near the end of the race. It's the Col de Tourmalet, where the men race to the highest elevation in this year's Tour, 7,000 feet. The trip straight back down readies them for the last climb up to the winter resort of Les Ardennes. It's expected to take 7.5 hours to complete. And with the hiking ahead, no one was in any hurry to burn out in the early going. The first part of the race saw the pack together, snaking its way through the foothills of the Pyrenees. But even though the riding appeared relaxed, the riders were not. Bernard Hinault looking like an angry prize fighter the day after. Greg LeMond has no time for chatter with the team car. Uncharacteristic for the American with that boyish demeanor. Wasn't there a time when Greg LeMond and the rest wore early morning smiles? The only playful man on a bicycle today, Stephen Roche, who was one of the top mountain men, suddenly found a lot of attention. It's as if the mountain knew this was the day to welcome the Tour de France. For as the serpent of cyclists left the valley and the gallery waited, the foul weather danced across the peaks to a devilish symphony. The worst possible conditions for the most arduous climb of the Tour de France. Through the fog, and barely visible, a bright piece of yellow. But Hinault and his pack were falling behind. Standing along the roadway, you could feel it. There was something more than an opaque mist hanging in the air. A message read on the face of Bernard Hinault, had he truly recovered from the crash. The hunger in the legs of Greg LeMond, now climbing ahead of Hinault. Here was a race that could change the overall time standings in one day. Here was a race that could strip Hinault's yellow jersey right off his back. Hinault's coach, Paul Coakley, knew it. Because up ahead was Stephen Roche, helping to carry the American Greg LeMond up the mountain with him.
Greg LeMond, world's #1 or #2? What's in the mind of the ambitious American as the call of the Pyrenees is heard only by the strongest? It's every man for himself now, and after being second for most of the Tour, LeMond counters the attack by Stephen Roche, who, as the time bomb of this race, is about to explode. Behind, Hinault's group struggles, and LeMond follows the common enemy. And for the La Vie Claire team, there are now two choices. Allow LeMond to go and hope he can beat Roche, or make him slow Roche down. Joined by a Colombian climber, the three open up a sizable lead over Hinault. The highest climb gives nothing away, but LeMond and his group have now built an attack with a gap of 1 minute 16 seconds. Hinault, the rider who's covered the course in the best time so far, has seen his early gains eroded by a teammate. LeMond checks with his coach, and on the descent, should he attack or try to slow Roche down and let Hinault catch up? Finally, Hinault reaches the summit. He must be a worried man now. On the hardest day of the Tour, the 9 miles climb up to the ski station of Lutz-Ardiden holds the answers. No one has ridden it before. The Tour has never been there. It's a secret which will soon be revealed. LeMond thinks he can win the Tour de France, but first he must find the strength on this 5,000 feet climb to break Roche. Fate, is it also on his side? For Roche punctures, and LeMond doesn't wait for him or Hinault. To save time, the Irishman grabs a new bicycle and a rather long push uphill, which the referees decided not to see. Roche continues to intrude in a personal battle now between two teammates. At last, LeMond is free to prove he is the best. But what about loyalty to his friend and mentor who needs just one more win to make history with 5 Tours de France? Doesn't LeMond owe him something?
Does American Greg LeMond owe anyone anything?
LeMond has his chance. What is going through his mind as he rides alongside Roche, who has rejoined after his puncture? LeMond is now under instructions from his team manager to slow Roche down. On a mountain, that's not easy. So LeMond rides alongside Roche, matching his speed, but not exceeding it. Has LeMond decided not to win the Tour? Why can't a rider in a winning position go for gold? Maybe his team doesn't have the faith in him that they have in Hinault surviving until Paris. In any case, to win, LeMond must leave Roche behind, and Roche has already shown his strength in the mountains by recovering from that puncture. LeMond's dilemma has turned into a nightmare. He knows he's strong. To the chance of his name, Hinault, the Badger, continues to fight, followed by his teammate, Niki Reutemann. What's in the mind of LeMond? Treachery, or is it loyalty? LeMond's team director attempts to make the decision, and he talks to LeMond, telling him to ride with Roche, but not to break from him. LeMond doesn't appear to like the idea, but in case he didn't get the message first time, the command is repeated. Led by Reutemann, his teammate Hinault is forced to discover new strengths to prove he really is the rightful holder of the yellow jersey. Up front, the argument goes on in French, and for the first time in this Tour, LeMond rebels against the team's instructions. He angrily attempts to persuade his coach that he should be given the chance to win the Tour. LeMond is now a frustrated young man. He knows he has the strength to attack, but his own team will not allow him to leave his leader behind. At long last, his instinct to win has shown through, and it clashes with his conscience to leave his mentor and close friend. Hinault, injured and confused, keeps a rhythm up the mountain. He knows now he is vulnerable, but he's not sure if his enemy is Roche or LeMond.
And is Le Mans' enemy Roche or his coach? Le Mans, a bright star on a team with one even brighter. He backs off his pace on the climb up the mountain they call Luzard Eden. What a crushing command to obey when you feel in your heart that in your legs is the power to become the first American ever to wear the Golden Fleece. As Le Mans slows, the riders between he and Hinault begin to close in. And soon the passive climbing of Le Mans attracts more riders. Hinault, leading his chase group, begins to close down the time gap. Does the Frenchman even know his American teammate has been told he must reduce the pace of his race with Roche to save Hinault's yellow jersey? Hinault hired Le Mans to ride with him on La Viclaire, and now it's clear who's riding for whom. The thoughts in the mind of the American now surely as cloudy as the mountain air through which he rides. Like a magnet, Le Mans and Roche attract even more, and their Pied Piper procession continues. Hinault is now only 1 minute behind. Le Mans' group of 2 has become 10 as they near the finish line. And Le Mans' group would finish 1 minute 13 seconds ahead of Hinault in this race, while the Frenchman in that yellow leader's jersey knew if he maintained his current pace up the mountain, he would surely stay in yellow. And the thousands along the mountain road who had just seen Le Mans knew Hinault would be safe. So while Le Mans picked up time, he was still 2:25 back, and the strength left for riding was used to produce tears. Hinault's suffering on the climb had taken its toll, and while he was attended to, Greg argued with the man who coaches them both.
All I have to say is if Hinault was in my place, he would not have waited. That's all I have to say. That's the truth. That's what difference. Hinault was in my... I have nothing against Hinault. I want him to win the Tour. I felt that if he was in my place at the last climb... Do you want me to punch you in the face? No. Get out of here.
Bernard Hinault back on the victory stand, but now with a severe case of bronchitis. So, in a strange twist of fate, will the coach's orders tomorrow send Le Mans after the yellow jersey? Will you let Greg LeMond go if he wants to?
If he can, that's the problem.
Still think you have a chance to win?
It's over now.
Is it? The next day, and the fans who wait outside Hinault's hotel are not so sure the Tour is over. Fans waiting outside Bernard Hinault's hotel room on day 20 are not disappointed. Rumors were everywhere that Hinault, after his harrowing crash and current bout with bronchitis, would pull out of the Tour. Well, you can see for yourself. Greg LeMond readies himself this morning after a day of controversy and tears, which is now the talk of the Tour.
So he's in a bad spot, really, you know. I feel sorry for Greg. Like, so he's by far the better man than Hinault, you know. But he just, because the way the situation is, he just can't play his own game, like.
You know, it was just, yesterday was just one chance in a lifetime. That's why I was probably upset more than anything.
Je pense que c'est la journée critique. Si je passe cette journée, après c'est fini.
If I make it through today, the Tour is over. The if may be there, because the day's climb is the last mountain stage, which is nearly straight up. And now for the La Viclaires, the task is to protect the Maillot Jaune, Bernard Hinault's yellow jersey, and make sure Hinault makes it to Paris unscathed. The only rider close enough in the standings to take it from him is Le Mans, and it would appear the decision has already been made. Le Mans will be a team player. Stephen Roche has made a move off the front. But at 30 miles, the race just isn't long enough to make up 5 minutes on Hinault. So the 5-time champion with Le Mans for a pacemaker rides the 7% grade up the Col d'Aubisque. Hundreds of thousands watch the climb, and what they see is a bright yellow jersey carried by a Frenchman. For Hinault and the rest, the sky is gone. There are only flailing arms and deafening screams. For the man who carries a jersey they thought was gone. And when Hinault finishes, it's time again for the mayhem. Because to the press, the Tour now must certainly be over. It's yellow once again for Hinault, who symbolically tosses part of his victory to the fans who have helped him in this race against all odds. Two races remaining before the finish line in Paris, and the first will be a time trial. The classic race against the watch and the face of Greg LeMond.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, stop!
This American rides with a passion in a Tour de France he now has no chance of winning. But the time trial is a race alone without what can be the shackles of team tactics. Greg LeMond is out to prove something, but to whom? Hinault begins his race, and the two are chased by the watch and by one another.
Working hard to keep his speed on the rolling course, LeMond gets up out of his saddle. The time trial is not LeMond's event. In fact, the poor showing in the time trials may have cost him the yellow jersey. Racing against the clock, he knows this is the last chance he has to prove to himself and the critics that he can be the best in the world.
Hinault is the recognized master of the time trial, and the reason everyone has been pronouncing this year's race already over is because they know the Badger's internal clock and legs of lightning will not allow anyone to snatch the color yellow off his back. They all know that to win a time trial is to prove inner discipline and total control.
In a race where every second is precious, Greg LeMond finishes in a near sprint. Over the last third of the course, LeMond has felt strong, and his time is the best so far, but now he can only wait. Hinault, too, has heard of LeMond's progress late in the race and pushes across the finish line in an all-out final effort. But it isn't enough. Greg LeMond has become the first American to win a stage in the Tour de France.
So the teammates who began as friends, had a day as adversaries, now enjoy Greg's historic victory together.
Une belle. Oui, c'est une belle, celui-là.
The crown jewel in Paris awaits. What a treat for the hundreds of thousands here to see their superstars, like Frenchman Bernard Hinault.
John, they've come from miles around to see their superstars, and one of the superstars this year, Greg LeMond, who's come on to the Champs-Élysées in second place in his second Tour de France. It's a day for the sprinters on the Champs-Élysées today. They're bringing their leader home now. No more attacks. They know they've lost this battle. They know the best man is known. And they come on to the Champs-Élysées across the sacred cobbles. They've covered 6 times this afternoon. 1 lap left to go to the end of the Tour de France, the last 6 kilometers of one of the most interesting races. And the sprinters go towards the last kilometer. Hinault knows now that that yellow jersey is his for keeps. The 5th and final time I think he'll ever win this Tour de France, and he's safe. Now all that remains for the sprinters to take the day's honours, and Rudy Matthijs of Belgium wins his 3rd stage of the Tour. He's nowhere overall. The man who's won this Tour de France, of course, is Bernard Hinault. 2,567
miles, and the best overall lapped time for this man. To dress in yellow one more time, Bernard Hinault, 5 Tour wins. The American story, of course, another historic one for Greg LeMond from Washoe County, Nevada. A kiss from his wife, Kathy. What about next year? The word from Bernard Hinault.
Je sacrifierais pour lui comme il a souffert pour moi. Mais je pense que avec le moral qu'il a maintenant, puisqu'il a gagné un peu d'amour et qu'il a rendu très confiant, je crois qu'il n'aura pas de défaillance l'année prochaine.
And as you look at the final standings, with Greg LeMond 142 behind Hinault, the closest finish in a decade. Bernard Hinault completing it in 113 hours, 24 minutes, 23 seconds. Well, that, of course, was some 7 hours ago. We're live.